a great panel today. I'm going to let everybody do like 2 to 3 minute introductions so that you can start formulating your questions. We will have a question session afterwards about the last 5 to 10 minutes. You want to start, Rosa?
Great. Good morning, everybody. My name is Rosa Davis. I work with Miami-Dade County in the Development Services Department, which is basically zoning. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. You are the ones that make a lot of the redevelopment and development happen in our community, so it's a pleasure to be here to share this experience with you. Today I'm going to be talking about the county's workforce housing program, and for those of you who may have some questions about what workforce housing is compared to affordable housing, essentially it's housing that is available the way the county defines it for those who are between 60% and 140% of the area median income. So what does that really mean, right? Basically, for a household of 4, it would be starting at approximately $45,000 for the household income, up to a household income of $99,000. That's what we consider workforce. And in our case, affordable housing it starts at 80% of the median income, which is about $56,000 for a household of 4. So our workforce housing has a little bit of affordable, as well as what others consider workforce.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Olivia Ramos. I am CEO of a company called Deep Blocks. We're leveraging artificial intelligence to combine all of the calculations involved in architecture, market analysis, financial analysis, eventually bringing in building codes. We're working with the zoning code right now, and sustainability. The idea is to have a smart system that gets smarter with every user and calculates thousands of different options to optimize housing. So we're able to, in a couple of minutes, analyze a property that currently takes 3 to 4 weeks. And we're hoping to provide this for all the different players in the industry, real estate developers, brokers, architects, contractors, so that they have a holistic look at every single project in a matter of minutes. So,
Perfect, thank you.
Good morning, my name is Matis Cohen. First of all, thank you RCA and Gibraltar, Michael Goldberg. I see a lot of friendly faces here in this area. And if I can just ask, how many people here live on Miami Beach? Just a show of, okay. How many people do business on Miami Beach? Okay. First of all, I would love to learn more about that, to understand how this technology will decipher the impossible code of the city of Miami Beach. And I'm here to tell you that if there is any hope for affordable, let alone attainable housing in the city of Miami Beach, the capital of exclusionary zoning 8 years running in the country, I'd be really interested in hearing some ideas. But without a overhaul of the city code, it is almost impossible, and I'd be happy to expand upon that.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Feldman. I'm real estate. Thank you. By the way, thank you very much for having me. I was a late addition to the panel. A couple of folks from the staff of the City of Miami Beach were unable to make it, so I was more than happy to fill in their absence. I have a real estate development background, and I'm also a general contractor here in Miami. I'm a partner in a company named Uribe Construction. We do lots of work throughout the city of Miami and Coral Gables and certainly Miami Beach. Bay Harbor Islands, Bal Harbor, et cetera. I'm also the vice chairman of the City of Miami Beach Planning Board, 3 years running, and I am a commission appointee to the City of Miami Beach Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. I'm the vice chairman of the Miami Beach Community Development Corp, and serve my community in many different ways, like the Ocean Drive Task Force and several other ways of serving my community. So I'm very, very happy to be here. This is a big discussion / debate in the city of Miami Beach, where I live and work and make policy. And with good people like all of you and people like Matis that are really fighting the battle that needs to be fought to try to find ways to get the code to open itself up to allow for truly attainable and affordable and workforce housing.
Great, that's a great lead-in for
Perfect.
Rosa. But before we start, can everybody please make sure that you just speak up? I guess some people in the back aren't hearing well enough. Rosa, I understand the county just revised their workforce housing program. Can you explain a little bit about what the revisions were, why they were made, and what they offer developers?
Certainly. Basically in 2008, the county put into place a workforce housing program. But as you recall, around that time, the country also had an economic downturn. So not a lot was happening in terms of real estate and housing production. So for a long time, the program went without much takers. And about 2 years ago, Commissioner Jordan, who spearheaded the original program, wanted to revisit it and find out why we didn't have that many applications for workforce housing, what could be done, particularly because of the housing situation that we have now in our county with respect to affordable housing. We met with the industry, and it took about a year or so to develop the ordinance. We got a lot of feedback as to what worked, what didn't, and in December of 2016, the ordinance was adopted. We had 6 months in which to put together the implementation order. So that meant that over the summer is when the implementation order finally became effect. So what does the ordinance do? Essentially, as I said before, the target is those who are from 60 to 140% of the median income. The basic thing that this particular ordinance does compared to the previous one is that no hearing is required. Before, if you wanted to participate in the workforce housing program, you had to undergo a pretty rigorous process and very expensive. Now it can be done administratively through our administrative site plan review process. In addition to that, the density bonus, we also changed the schedule for the density bonus. And for 10% workforce housing units that you commit to, you can receive up to a 25% density bonus. So that's another change that we made. We also changed the regulations so that you could build on smaller lots and allow for greater intensification. And we created more alternatives for how developers can participate. So you don't necessarily have to build on site. We also gave other options for being able to participate in the workforce program and being able to benefit from the different incentives that it provides.
Perfect, thank you. Jeff, next policy question is for you. What do you think can be done on Miami Beach in order to get developers, to incentivize developers to either build workforce housing or to renovate and maintain housing?
That's the crux of the discussion in Miami Beach right now. The nastiest word ever spoken in the city of Miami Beach is FAR. Everybody and their brother is afraid to ever increase FAR. It's, for me, the one and maybe only way that we'll ever be able to do it. Our code is very restrictive, and getting more restrictive, I might add, with a few of the ordinances that are coming through that we're working on right now. Very challenging to, for example, the North Beach Master Plan, and we've got a couple conservation districts that are being proposed that are actually on our board's desk right now that are actually, being couched as incentive-driven, but they're preservation documents, and I am all for preservation, but there's a conflict we have in Miami Beach between preservation and good quality development. I won't even get started unless you ask the question about sea level rise.
I was going to get, that's for Matis to answer. How is sea level rise going to affect affordability in Miami Beach in particular, since you guys are ground zero?
So I don't think I introduced myself before. I am a property investor, developer, and activist. And before 1992, before the building code was established, to withstand or had any issues of resiliency, any property prior to that has inherent risk for life and property. So if you're living in a home, a garden apartment, a lower income housing project, the chances are about 90% you're below base flood elevation. That is an unacceptable risk, as we have witnessed in Houston, and we've witnessed all over this country and in our region. And it's only a matter of time that the banks and the federal government, as you know, the federal government demands that you have flood insurance if you have a mortgage. And NFIP is coming up now for renewal, which has a lot of problems for Florida. So it's only a matter of time that there's going to be a problem that if you own a property or develop a property below base flood elevation, will it be inhabitable? And that is a total contradiction to affordability. The additional costs that are involved in making a property resilient that will meet the government standards is going to be, at this point, is out of reach.
Thank you for that perfect lead-in for Olivia. Yes, that was perfect. How do you think artificial intelligence is going to play a role in all of this, affordability, resiliency, et cetera?
Sure. So the problem right now that we're looking at from a technology perspective is that it takes a very long time to come up with optimal solutions. So usually a developer or even the city can afford to just come up with a solution or maybe 3 options. With artificial intelligence, we can come up with thousands of solutions, and it will select the top 3 most optimal depending on what you're looking for, whether it's profit, efficiency, affordability. So on the city side, and speaking about where you take your FAR, you'd be able to test thousands of models in a very short amount of time to understand on the economical perspective as well and on the sort of the affordability perspective, what would be the right measure. Right now, it's very expensive to conduct those studies, and from the developer perspective, it's very expensive to have an architect do both an affordable option, a luxury option, a sustainable option, so it doesn't get done right now. With our software, you'll be able to run all of those in just minutes and therefore really understand how to move forward with a specific situation, whether it's sea level rise, affordability, sustainability, or profit.
Thank you. And now question is in deference to John Dom. What impact do you think all of this automation is going to have on everything from workforce, jobs, transportation, because all of those all come in and affect affordability, and that's for each one of you, whoever wants to start first.
I can just make it. Can you hear me okay back there? Did it go off?
No, yeah.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
I can just say, I mean, I think everybody in the room knows that technology is changing at light speed from. I think I mentioned to you, I've got a friend in Stockholm who actually has a robot in his office that he can look through a virtual reality system and actually move his robot through his office back in Stockholm from his home in Mykonos and his home in Miami and his home in Ibiza. And, so he can actually be in his workplace. And I think that type of thing and virtual reality and things like this, they're really going to change the game. And it's happening so fast. Not to mention, and I'll just add, from a planning perspective, the way that the automobile industry is rapidly changing. I mean, autonomous driving vehicles are not coming. They're already here. Uber's doing it in Pittsburgh with Volvo, the safest car in the world. And that technology is going to change policies. In fact, Michael Bloomberg's, I think it's called like the Aspen Institute or whatever it's called, is studying codes in 5 major cities around the world, and they're pre-planning for how our codes and policies going to be changing due to the fact that the car is no longer going to be something we buy, but we simply only use. And so that's going to change the built environment. That's going to change parking. I am the biggest advocate in the world, and Matis knows, for either a substantial reduction or complete elimination of minimum parking requirements. I think that is one of the keys to affordability. We keep approving, we meaning the greater legislators and people that sit in positions like mine, we keep approving projects with mandated parking when the developer, and I ask them every time, Madam Developer, if you are building this hotel with 250 keys, how many parking spaces do you really want? And the answer is 50. Well, how many do you have to put in? 325. And it's like, oh man, what a waste of time and energy and money and materials. And I mean, I'm sure I'm speaking to the choir here, but
No, but that drives up costs, which drives up affordability.
If you read the most recent Miami Today, on the cover, the Omni has a 57-story hotel tower coming with no parking. So and we have 4 towers already in the city of Miami alone that have no parking. They have shared parking agreements off-site, and they're doing transit orientation and things like this. So that goes to the end user. So technology.
Anybody else want to comment on that, like maybe 3D printing?
I want to, yeah, so the FIU's Urban Studios in Miami Beach is working very closely on 3D modeling. And the code analysis is something that has to be embraced by every city. I think that Miami Beach specifically has a problem because when we hear talking about Miami-Dade, it talks about density, intensity. City of Miami Beach would talk about FAR. They're not the same. Because if you look at the code in Miami Beach, it's 192 pages. What is the definition of FAR? And I'm sure you don't have that in Miami. Now, I am right now working on a project in North Beach to do engineered units. So a group, I think it's called Aura out of MIT, are building a engineered unit that you walk into the unit, your living room and dining room and bedroom are kind of interchangeable. It's not like the old Murphy beds, but it's on the same concept in which your living space is transformable into your bedroom and dining area. And this will enable us to, instead of provide a 600 square foot apartment, a 380 or 420 square foot apartment that will have the same thing, but give the amenity of the outdoor living in Miami, which is the green roof and the all of the outdoor barbecues and things like that, and not compete for space. So I think that the technology right now is really moving us into new ways how to look at urbanization as well. So 65% of the world population is living in urban core. Is that really the cause of the traffic? Now, going back to Jeff's point, in the city of Miami Beach, when they allowed Uber and Lyft to legally act in the city parking lots utilization rate went down 25%. So the people are thinking there's more traffic. Yes, there's more traffic because the same cars are making the same rounds, but that's going to become more efficient. But there is a less need for parking. So 25% of the capacity of structural build was built that has no use for it and is not adaptable. I think that answered?
Yes,
Yeah.
very good. Thank you. Do you have anything to add?
I'd also like to make a comment. I think one of the greatest challenges of the technology, at least from the point of view of cities and cities and in the county, is that our codes are pretty much from the 40s, 50s. So in large part, much of what's in the regulations is outdated. But at the same time, we have a lot of changes that are happening with respect to technology and demand from the industry, different industries, to change the code. And so if you think about not just the county, but all the small municipalities that exist in Miami-Dade County, that's a challenge for them because they're being asked to change what's in the books, what has been there for many years, and they may not have the expertise to understand how to deal with the new technology that's coming in. So some of the software and tools that you're talking about may be a solution for addressing that particular need.
Great, thank you. Olivia, you want to jump in since your technology, what you're developing?
Sure. Well, in terms of how technology is going to how our technology might affect affordability is a lot of the cost, like I said before, comes into paying people to analyze and to run a lot of calculations. So if that's done instantly and the analysis is practically free, then we're able to really put time on what is affordability and what are all the different components required to make something affordable. So when that analysis is free, there's no excuse not to do affordable products because the answers are sort of laid out for you without you having to pay somebody or without the current cost of paying for such an analysis. And that's sort of how we're contributing. We imagine bringing in systems on the construction side, like 3D printing buildings, which are happening right now, 3D printing offsite and shipping construction parts, which is also happening right now. It's going to couple the technologies of artificial intelligence to come up with the most optimal and best use for every single site. Our software will expand and scale to be able to analyze entire municipalities at once, where now you can see how moving something in the zoning code or the building code might affect other areas and sort of have a very large analysis so that municipalities can make rules that and they know what the consequences would be. But on the individual building level, being able to do very fast analysis, I think will have an impact on affordability.
I think if I could just, I think that we are definitely on the precipice of a paradigm change. We have been, I think we're at the point where the technology, logistics, and manufacturing have kind of caught up with each other, that we're, and pushing, and also with the social change issues, that the need is so great that it's being urged to be accelerated. And in every conversation with the policymakers, developers, property owners, whether it's affordable, attainable, or luxury housing, these issues are being raised in every part of the discussion. And so it's only a short matter of time where application and production and delivery is going to be available and change the way we look at housing.
So I think you read my cheat sheet, because that was actually kind of one of my questions. With everything changing so rapidly, it puts a lot of pressure on existing communities that have been established for a really long time. So how do you find the middle ground between government and policy making, development, preservationists, where, in addition to costs, which that could be middle ground, everyone agrees in lowering costs, making everything more affordable. Where else can you find middle ground? Because there's a huge push and some people feel like they're just being steamrolled through, and that affects affordability.
May I?
Mm-hmm. It's for all.
I think finding the middle ground is really the key to success in almost everything that we do. However, I think that we're faced with some unique challenges here in South Florida, specifically Miami and Miami Beach, but really all of South Florida, and particularly all of our coastal communities, with sea level rise. I think it changes everything. If we in Miami Beach believe what we tell ourselves and the way we spend our money, we have, what do we have? Almost $500 million worth of committed funds for raising roads, improving infrastructure, and installing pump systems. That, by the way, regardless, in spite of what you may hear from the press every now and again, or if you fall into the Facebook rabbit hole of people and their commentary, the pump systems in Miami Beach work wonderfully. What has happened and what's going to continue to happen is that as the government takes care of its own properties, the public's going to have to take care of their own properties. So if we raise our streets and we raise our properties, which are streets and sidewalks, and we install pumps, and all of a sudden your private property is below the street level, it's incumbent upon you, and if your neighbor builds a new building that is above your new building because of the new base flood elevation, your building has now become obsolete. So I struggle, and again, I can't say this enough. I am all for preservation. I think preservation in Miami Beach and structures like this is completely invaluable Is that the right word? Invaluable? Invaluable. And, but there's a big but. We have to look at the future of the sea level rise issue, and it collides head on with preservation, and it blows it up. Because you'll have some people, some preservationists, some very hardcore fundamentalist preservationists who say, you know what, either keep it the way it is and we'll retreat when the time comes, and I swear to you, there are people that are saying this in our city, or we'll deal with it when the sea level actually starts to rise more and it looks like it's going to be a threat. Those are both completely asinine approaches. So it's a struggle. It's a real struggle.
I'm in the trenches in this debate. I'm going to test out my new line that, and maybe you guys will tell me if it resonates or not. Preservation is a religion, and every property owner, developer, and builder is a blasphemer. And what happens is that we use the same words, but they mean polar opposite things. When a preservationist tells you the words incentive and protection, it is the polar opposite of what a businessman uses. So you have a conversation of two people in the room shaking their head at each other and saying incentive, protection, and they're going yes, and then they walk away and they said, how is it that we were speaking parallel universe? Because the definition for a preservationist and for a business person are absolutely opposite. But yet, those conversations are happening. The positive is nobody has a choice or the luxury to sit around and wait and say in 10 years from now. Because if you just take a look at the Miami-Dade County tax rolls and take a look at any multifamily property and look what happened last year to the land value and the building value, you will notice that the land value went up and the building value came down. That means that the county level appraiser realizes that the life of the building itself has come down in value, and the value is in the land for redevelopment. They would not have made that kind of a shift in an upward market without making that assumption. And that is monumental. Monumental. Now, when you come back to sea level rise, affordability, and what does the market want? So in North Beach, for example, in Miami Beach, anybody knows where North Beach is, it is the place that nobody knows where it is in Miami Beach, but it is in Miami Beach. From 63rd Street to 87th Street. And we right now have a ballot question on the election, and the ballot question says, do you agree to increase the FAR from TC1, TC2, TC3, increase density, it's like asking somebody if they want to eat poison. Nobody will ever understand that. We have a campaign called North Beach Now, Vote Yes 82, and that is to intensify a town center to make it a hub for activity to create community. Under the guidelines of resiliency, and I'm hoping, because I'm pretty negative until now, I'm hoping that if this passes, it could be a model for how to build in a coastal community an urban type structure that would be mixed use.
Olivia, in your experience, because it seems like you've kind of run the gamut along everything that we've discussed, what brought you between preservation and development and architecture to develop the software that you did? What was the trigger, I guess? Or
Actually, yes, to the last point, I have a master's in architecture from Columbia University, a second master's in real estate development, and I've worked in construction. And one of the observations is everybody's speaking a different language, even if they're using the same words. So being able to come together, and all these industries that surround real estate development, to come together and agree on what needs to happen has, for us and Deep Blocks, has to do with bringing that language into a universal understanding. So we're bringing together all the architecture language and calculations, the real estate development language and calculations, the construction, so that any one party can understand the entire thing. So if everybody sitting on the table comes from different industries, but they're all speaking the same language, then we can agree that, for example, in this property, historic preservation makes no sense economically, because usually the architect or historic preservation person does not understand the financial side. And if they don't, then they're just pushing for something that they're very passionate about, and that's beautiful, but it doesn't work economically, and that hurts the city. So if everybody understands the design aspects, which are very important and can have a huge impact, combined with the financial aspects, then we can make decisions together much faster, and we wouldn't be at a bottleneck for decision making that needs to be done today, not 10 years from now.
Perfect, thank you. Before I open it up to questions, I just want to bring up two issues that your association is working with, and we're going to need everybody's help on, and they do both address affordability. One is the National Flood Insurance Plan, which was supposed to expire. It's been extended for 90 days, but there is a call to action from Florida Realtors that they send out an appeal so that we could write to our congressman. Super easy, you push a button, and I think our response rate was less than 2%, and we're, again, in ground zero for needing flood insurance. So if all of you take out your phone, I don't know, I think it's only for realtors, right? The text number, the text realtor. So if you're a realtor, well, okay, try it anyway. Text the number 30644 to the number 30644, text the word Realtors with an S. You will get an alert. They only send out 3 to 4 alerts a year, but this is one of them that just push the respond button to let people know how important it is for our area to have insurance. The second issue is amendment number 2, which addresses the 10% cap on property taxes for non-exempt homes that is due to expire in 2018. It is on the ballot for 2018. We need to get that passed because that directly affects affordability. If that doesn't pass, all of a sudden people who currently own affordable units are going to may find in certain areas that their property taxes have gone up. So thank you very much. We're going to open the floor now to questions. Yes, in the back. And I don't know if we have a mic. Thank you.
Thank you. Anitra Thorhog, president of Universal Investment Realty. I'm from 4 generations of realtor, but I'd like to put on my other hat, which is a PhD in marine sciences, and I want to ask you all, how many of you know what is filled and what is not filled? Because Carl Fisher, as an example, when he bought for $101.12 the back half of Miami Beach, was on a massive filling spree, and much of downtown Miami is filled. But not only that, much of the swampy stuff that Henry Wolf and many other people developed, such as the Miami Airport Kendall Drive, was all a swamp. Now, Mother Nature may indeed have the last laugh, but as sea level rises, these filled areas, and as extreme disturbances in nature occur, such as major hurricanes, these are the most vulnerable areas in Dade County, the filled areas. I'm wondering how many of you use the fill maps and the old historical photographs and so forth, which are readily available when you go make your purchases for any dense housing.
I look at it on a regular basis. Miami Beach, the barrier island, is Collins Avenue. Collins Avenue is at a base flood elevation +1. Any new development was built at least a base flood elevation +5. So you're pretty good over there. As you go to Harding Avenue or 1 Avenue West, you've gone down to base flood elevation -3. So clearly when the great developers of the early 19th century, not so long ago, were filling in the island, they didn't have any concern regarding sea level rise. And the aquifer and all of those issues right now are really becoming a major, major discussion in Miami Beach. I can't speak for Miami, except for to say that we all saw the pictures of Brickell Avenue and the water flowing through there. And it is a real concern in that the filling, the actual filling, the unnatural part of the island is subject to greater risk.
Okay, anybody else with a question other than Paul in the front? Danny?
So, the FAR, in City of Miami, which is much newer zoning codes under Miami 21, we went from FAR to FLR, which encompasses parking on top of the FAR, and this new zoning. So why do an FLR as opposed to an FAR if parking is going to go the other way?
That's a great question. I mean, you go, okay. Yeah.
All right. So
You stumped him, Danny.
So Miami has accepted the very fact that they had to change their zoning code. The Miami 21 was a very big decision and a hard decision for government to take, but they took it. There were problems with the Miami 21, and they're right now talking about making other changes. They made, I think, tremendous headway in density bonuses for affordability. The calculation in Miami 21 still has certain issues regarding the FLR calculation. The FAR calculation is Chinese. You don't know if your staircase is included in your living space, your elevator shaft, your equipment room, and in a building that you have, let's say, 20,000 square foot of buildable entitlements, it could end up, I saw Nate, there you go, Nate. A small property where I think it's 4,800 square foot development, 26 or 28% of the developable rights were used for public space, meaning the staircase and the lobby area. Now, we don't have to be an economics professional to understand that there's no way that that could be efficient or economical.
Yeah, but in FLR, you have setbacks. Whatever you're taking away from FAR, you're taking away from FLR.
But that's a separate issue. So now, once you have the development entitlement, then the city code says, well, we want you to set your building back 10 feet or 20 feet or 30 feet. And then they say, no, we want to step back after the fourth floor. Those things are different from, it's a contradiction to some areas in Miami where you have excess entitlement, but because of all of the other code amendments, you actually can't get that entitlement into the property. That's a whole different discussion regarding how do you really manifest the entitlements that you have. And I don't have an answer for that. I have the same question.
Fernando?
Yes, thank you all for participating today. This has been fantastic. Jeff, you mentioned about the issue of racing the streets in Miami Beach and how that would affect individual properties. From a practical perspective, what would you like to see the city or the municipalities do to compensate those owners that may lose an entire first floor, that may have to reconfigure their space in order to do that? Because at some point, they might not have any choice.
Herein lies the million-dollar question. You know, I always tell the story about a buddy of mine who started a healthcare company on the internet many years ago that with the stroke of the pen of Obamacare, his company that was making him $1 million a year, was a genius idea, went away overnight. Sometimes we're always one piece of legislation or one decision away from our business or our investment or our whatever being impacted. Happens to hospitals all the time where the federal or state laws change and all of a sudden the way they operate has to change. And I look at property investment really no differently. It's a business. Whether it's your home or it's your place of business, I don't know if it's the popular answer, and I don't know if it's actually the right answer or really even how I feel. I really have to think about it, and we got to have this discussion, but I don't necessarily think it's on the government or the city to, it's a tough answer for me, to be honest with you. I don't know that it's, maybe you have a better answer, but it's a challenge. We are faced with this is a crisis. And in Miami Beach, we have a bunch of people who are saying, whoa, slow your roll on all of this street raising thing and stretch it out longer. Whereas I'm saying, what are we doing stretching it out? We should be speeding it up.
Accelerate.
We should be accelerating it. So it's the preservationists that don't want to see it really happen. So it's an interest. This is the thing. This is it. And we're working on it.
So Jeff mentioned before that if you have a building that you build today, and you're building at a base flood elevation +5, and you own a property next door to it, and their entrance to their building will be at the rooftop of yours, what happens to the value of your building? Forget about if it's obsolete or not, whether it's inhabitable or not. The value of your property has gone down to nothing, unless you are able to adapt. So the city of Miami Beach went aggressively to implement a mitigation plan. But they forgot the private owner in that mitigation plan. They said, we're going to tax you. We're going to raise money from a bond. We're going to raise $450 million. We spent $150 million already. Started a plan. We're all for it. Yay. So we're paying. And then on the second side, they said, but you, property owner, you can't touch your property. So you can't adapt. That conversation is going to happen very soon. Because once the consequences of that decision to go forward without thinking about the property owner rights are going to hit the fan, the proverbial fan, and then they're going to have to deal with it. And it's unfortunate that that's how, the government, private sector work, but that's what happens.
If I just really briefly may add, the conundrum continues. Tune in live to Miami Beach TV on October 24th when the planning board goes for its fifth, sixth, seventh iteration of bantering what the heck we're going to do with this conservation district that came out of the North Beach master plan that's planning the city's future, just like they did in the 1960s and 70s. There's nothing really, in my opinion, my own opinion, there's nothing really futuristic about it at all. Building buildings on pedestals, and okay, so we have a dedicated bus lane and some bike lanes, but there's nothing futuristic about it. What are we doing with the conservation district, which says we can't aggregate lots? It says if you retain a certain percentage of an existing building, then you can build more. Yeah, but I'm a developer and I'm in construction, and I know from a cost perspective, it doesn't really add up. I mean, we really kind of need a clean slate to build an efficient, affordable building.
And add landfill.
Yeah.
And it sounds like Olivia's software could really help with
Yeah.
a lot of this, because you can play with a bunch, at least from the very little I understand of it, you can play with a lot of these different scenarios and do
Analytics,
trade-offs. Well, as we wrap up, we have one last question, and Paul's been chomping at
I
the
will,
bit.
I will defer my question to somebody else if somebody else wants a question, since I am the last one.
Thank you, guys. I don't know if we have an option, 1, 2, or 3 options, talking about the solution. I don't know. For example, one option is a wall coming from the sea, or the other option is increase the level of the street for Miami Beach, or the other option is working with very sewer system that help this potential flood. So do we have an option, 1 or 2 or 3, or is a combined option, or do we have a favor option to solve this problem?
So Miami Beach has chosen a mitigation process. Pumps alone do not solve a problem. It's mitigation for when there's overflow. New sewer systems, infrastructure, pump systems. Sea walls are for storm surge, not for rain. So using water and guiding the water through our city and also raising the streets. It's a total package. There is no technology or anything that I've heard until today, maybe you've heard, but I haven't heard of any technology that has been able to be adaptive to Miami Beach because of its sandstone, limestone. But Amsterdam and all of these Rotterdam projects, it's very different. They need to keep the storm surge out. So yeah, we have a unique problem, and it's a combination.
So, do you want to, are you going to ask the last? I have to ask a
Well, we have
burning
a tech-
question.
we have a
that-
technology
Oh, yeah,
answer.
sorry, go ahead and
Just
answer that.
to your question, something that we've been looking at is as all of the sustainable and exponential technologies keeps getting cheaper and stronger, one potential solution is to have every building sort of have its own infrastructure, so that when there is a catastrophe, it doesn't impact an entire section of the city if every building sort of maintained itself, was autonomous from the infrastructure. For that to happen, there needs to be a lot of change in the way we look at sustainable systems and the way we look at being able to detach from infrastructure. And it seems like something that's going to be far in the future, but we predict that it's not at all. And with all the systems coming into play, making each building more autonomous, maybe not completely autonomous, will increase the safety and security of these buildings when there's catastrophes or when the water gets too high to sort of mediate between the situation.
And perhaps the first step will be that battle between FP&L and solar installation.
Yes.
I'd also like to add what the county is doing. We have a unit of resiliency that's looking at this issue very closely. We are also in the process of doing our evaluation and appraisal report for the county's master plan, and this is one of the issues that we're looking at. And part of what is being done is we're looking at other places such as New York and other cities that have actually started to address some of these issues. One thing that we're doing is we're looking at the life cycle of the structures. So these are some of the things that we are looking at, not just the infrastructure of the roads and so forth, but also the buildings. The County Commission has asked us to take a look at our various regulations, from our environmental regulations to our public works regulations, zoning and so forth, to see what we might be able to do to address these issues. It's again, as I said before, a lot of what we have in the code are regulations from the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. So we are going to have to look at things very differently in order to address these issues.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank our panel. Obviously, workforce housing isn't a simple issue. To tackle, it takes in resiliency issues, affordability issues, technology issues. So I hope our panelists were able to stimulate everybody's brain and get us thinking about some different alternatives and solutions. I know I have a ton of questions and look forward to speaking with you all again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much.